Hello there, this is James S. Croft, year 1978, and first of all, let's get one thing straight, shall we? Looking back at the sheer scale of the backlash against Labour's nominally pro-Remain position in its former heartlands, with millions of working-class voters punishing the party for what they perceived as the betrayal of offering a second referendum, there's no way that Labour could have won the general election in December, regardless of who the leader may have been, and especially if Jeremy Corbyn had been replaced with a moderate centrist Remainiac who promised to campaign for Remain in the upcoming second referendum, or worse, to revoke Article 50 altogether, effectively telling millions of Leave voters to go and fuck themselves, because ultimately, as far as the majority of voters in the 48 Leave voting seats that Labour lost to the Tories were concerned, getting Brexit done after 3.5 years of squabbling was the only issue of consequence, and while Labour was perceived as threatening to cancel Brexit, Boris Johnson promised to get Brexit done at any cost. That's it, full stop. The fat lady has sung, signed a record deal, and released a platinum-selling album. Like Trump in the US, a literal personification of the establishment and the elite, which he laughably claimed to oppose and condemn for the sake of his own personal ambition, managed to deceive enough angry, bitter and resentful working-class voters who feel left behind that the party which exists for the sole purpose of further enriching and empowering the elite, which is already obscenely rich and powerful, is on their side by stoking up a largely imaginary and ultimately trivial issue into a massive life or death culture war in which everyone who opposes or even questions you is a degenerate traitor who deserves to either be imprisoned or shot. So looking ahead to the election of the Labour Party's next leader in early April and the next general election, which will probably be held sometime in 2024, the question is not who the leader will be, what our policies will be, or whether Labour will benefit from moving back towards the centre, although FYI, it won't. And if you doubt that for a single second, then ask former MPs Joe Swinson, Chuka Umunna, Luciana Berger, any one of the former MPs in the now dissolved and debunked Independent Group for Change, or any of the other moderate centrist Remainiacs who suffered an even worse wipeout than Labour. Instead, the only question is whether the bitter, angry and resentful former Labour voters who put getting Brexit done over everything else last December, including their own futures, will still be bitter, angry and resentful 5 years from now, still demanding a real, true and genuine Brexit which does not and cannot exist. Because if Brexit is simply a matter of voters wanting us to leave the EU, then no problem. We will leave at some point within the next 5 years, leading inevitably to the breakup of the United Kingdom, beyond which the Tories will have absolutely nothing left to offer. And given the fact that even if Brexit doesn't turn out to be a monumental disaster for the ages, we are still heading for another recession anyway, then provided that someone like Jess Phillips isn't elected leader and the party's policies are dragged kicking and screaming back to the moderate, centrist Tory-like neoliberalism of the Blair and Brown years, which given her massive unpopularity among the membership compared to the nationwide popularity of Labour's other policies under Corbyn, and the fact that he still won more votes in 2019 than Blair in 2005, Miliband or Brown, is virtually impossible, then Labour will have the next election in the bag. But if, as I fear, Brexit is simply a convenient label and a melting pot for all of the existential bitterness, anxiety and resentment of an aging white cis-het working and middle-class population who are becoming increasingly obsolete and feel isolated, left behind and even vilified in a world that is changing all around them every day, thus feeling compelled to lash out at the metropolitan globalist political elite, who the billionaire-owned newspapers tell them is the cause of all of their problems, then the Tories will continue to win election after election on the backs of simplistic slogans, paranoia and hate.